Just gone 3:30 now on BBC Radio Cornwall. Now, we've been talking to authors involved with Lou's first ever literary festival, which is happening next week. One of them is the Cornwall-based author Anne Foweraker, who's, amongst other things, is going to be talking about her new book, which is out in April, called Nothing Ever Happens, and it is appropriately set in Lou. And she's with me now. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
So
lovely to see you as well. Now, the paperback was out in April, I believe, wasn't it? This book. And I believe I'm right in saying when you heard the festival, the plans for the literary festival in Lou, you felt it was an appropriate title for you to come, to try and get to the festival as well.
Absolutely. I thought this is a perfect fit for the Lou Literary Festival. So I got on to them and yes, I have an author slot there so people can come along and find out more about the book, more about the other books I write.
And we'll talk a little bit more about the book in a moment, but as an author based in Cornwall, it must be lovely to be involved with the local festival.
Yeah, I think it's because you're going to know the area, you're going to know the people, and of course your friends can come along as well, and that'd be good. I'm also there with the Truscott poetry group, which are doing the section they call Poetry Invaders. So we're reading our poetry there as well. So it's going to be a really busy day. Yeah,
busy day on Saturday for you. So you're at the Old Boathouse Cafe at 1:30 with your author slot, aren't you? And then you're with the Truscott Poets, as you said, as well on the Saturday.
Yeah, that's 11 o'clock.
So a busy weekend ahead for you next weekend. The book, we've spoken to you before. You had some great success with your previous books as well. How difficult was it for you to kind of get writing this particular book after the others have been well received? Because there's a bit of pressure on you then, isn't it?
Well, this is where I've got to make an admission. This book was actually written quite a long time ago. As you might remember, that I started writing back when my fourth son was about 18 months old-ish. I can't remember when exactly, when he was being potty trained. Good job he's outside the country at the moment.
Yes, he won't thank you for that.
Yeah, he won't thank me for that. And that's when I started writing. So I wrote this book back in the early 1990s. It then basically has sat there for a long time. And recently I was looking at all the books and thinking, yes, these are good. I actually thought about should I or could I bring it up to date because the story was good. And I can't because it does need the technology of the early 1990s for it to work.
Yes, because there's a couple of things within it, isn't there? There's several aspects when people can't get hold of each other communications-wise. And although we know mobile phones don't always work in Cornwall, most people you can get hold of these days. So I suppose you needed that element, didn't you?
Yes, and we also needed an element of there not being very many personal computers around, and certainly not all of them using the same sort of data storage mechanisms.
Yeah, there's a few mentions of floppy disks, I noticed.
Floppy disks.
And for those young people listening, they're kind of like an USB stick, but older version of it.
Yeah, that was... I was just going to say 4 inches square, but that would date me too, would it? So we're talking about 12 centimetres square, thin, with a little metal disc in the middle of them that you would slot into your computer to store your data. And they are actually rigid. They did supersede something that was actually floppy, but they were still known as floppy disks. And the data is very important in this story. And it could only be read on a certain type of computer. Alas, even that type of computer isn't available anymore. So,
but as you say, you decided that you were going to stick with the 1990s. Yeah. And how much of the novel had you written back then? I completed the whole novel. I did go through it and edit it again, but I had completed the whole novel back then. So basically, it's been re-edited and then brought out now as a book that is set in the 1990s, because now we're looking back at that as a different time. It was a really pivotal time for technology.
it changed lots of things.
You're looking at like 20 years ago,
I know,
aren't you?
20 years ago.
It seems unbelievable to think that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem that long ago, and yet it was. So here you are with this story about a lady and her teenage son who moved down to Cornwall because they've had a kind of a difficult time. And the whole title of the book is from a teenage girl that the son meets who says nothing ever happens around here. It sounds like the kind of thing that teenagers used to say. Well, probably still say, don't they now?
Still say it, but probably even worse back then for nothing ever happens here.
And you've got a bit of everything in this. You've got a bit of crime, romance, smuggling.
Yeah, well, my books have never sat very tidily in any genre. I've now set most of them as light thrillers. I mean, I call them light thrillers because you don't have these unbelievable car chases, and you don't have lots of shooting up and blood and gore that you get in thrillers, usually American thrillers. In fact, one of my reviewers wrote, "I do like an English thriller."
Oh, that's nice.
Which I thought was a really good title, English thriller, except not if you've got books set in Cornwall. Better not call them English thrillers.
No.
So I call them light thrillers. But it does, it has crime because one of the other main characters is a detective inspector. He's been working in the Met. He actually comes from the West Country, and because 18 months previous to the beginning of the story, his wife and daughter have been killed, he now doesn't want to stay up in London anymore. So he's just gets a transfer down to Plymouth. And the other main characters are, as you say, Jo, who's the deputy head at a big primary school in London, and her 16-year-old son. And they've had nasty things happen. And they're getting away for a break, a holiday in Loo.
But of course, when situations are like that, they're never going to get away from anything, are they? They're just going to encounter problems, aren't they? And when you kind of dug this sort of script out that you wrote from the 90s, when you read through it, did you think, oh, I can't believe I wrote that? Was it one of those cases?
Yeah. In fact, it went... I have to thank a relatively new friend of mine who I'd known for 3 or 4 years before I let on to her that I wrote. And she sort of went, "Oh, I don't mind reading some of what you've written." And as she is a lady who reads a lot. She reads really highbrow stuff, and she'll read lowbrow, and she'll reads just about anything. I said, "Okay then," and I gave her the manuscript, all in big sheets and sheets of paper. Well, she came back to me and she said, "Why haven't you done something with this?" She said, "I was in tears at one point. This is good. You must do something." Well, and that's what forced me to do something with it again.
That's incredible, isn't it? To get that kind of feedback.
Yes. She's, she gave me a real boot to get going again. So.
And what was it like when it came out in April?
It's lovely. I have it holding it in real book form. I had brought it out as an ebook originally. But there's nothing like a real book in your hand.
No, there's not, is there, actually? It just feels different, doesn't it? It's
does.
kind of more real, isn't it, that? And have you got any other manuscripts that in the back of a cupboard anywhere that you've written?
Well, yes, I have, actually. And that one should be coming out fairly shortly in paperback. It is actually available as an ebook. That's called Some Kind of Synchrony. And that is set later in the 1990s. And I'm currently writing, obviously. I'm currently writing another one, which will be contemporary. So
there's no stopping you at the moment.
It's good. It's called having a record of publications. It's great. Yeah.
And you're, as we mentioned, you're going to be at the Loo Literary Festival next Saturday. And what's going to be involved in your author's slot? Do you know what you're going to be doing at the moment? Will you be reading a little bit of the book?
Yes, it's not quite finalised, but I intend to do a short reading from Nothing Ever Happens Here and take some questions. I'm going to run a free little draw, a competition. I hope to introduce people to my other works. Have a good time, perhaps we'll have cake.
Well, now people are going to be there, aren't they, if they think there's cake involved?
I rather like I like making cakes, and I really like decorating cakes. I have plans for painting the cover of the book on top of the cake with food colouring.
I'm thinking, cakes, there's not much crime around cakes. Or is there? Is that going to be a possibility?
Well, there you go. As long as I don't poison it, it'll be okay.
And if people want to get hold of a copy of your book, you'll obviously have some copies, won't you, at the festival next weekend? But it's probably available online now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's available online. You can order them from any bookshop. They're distributed by Ingram, so they're available to order by any bookshop. At the festival, they're having a pop-up bookshop, so they'll be there, and I'll have them at my author slot as well. And if you can't get to Lou, I've just just arranged to be a very new literary preview that they're having at the Upton Cross Art and Craft exhibition, which is at the beginning of December.
Now, I've heard about this. This is an incredible exhibition. It's been going for years, hasn't it? And
it has.
It's kind of grown and grown over the years.
Well, they've just decided there are three authors. There's myself, there's Simon Parker and Stuart Fraser. And she's in the preview evening, which is on Friday, the 5th of December at 7:30. We're going to have a little literary preview part as well. The three authors.
And Stuart Fraser, I spoke to him last week, actually. He's written a book of ghost stories.
That's right, and that's right. That's where Ruth sort of got the idea when she went to his book launch, and she thought, I've got three authors under my belt now. She said, perhaps we'll do this. So that's coming up. And then, of course, the books will all be there on that Friday evening and the following 2 days, the 6th and the 7th.
So a busy time ahead for you. And it's funny, people have probably said it to you already, but this book has been on my desk since it arrived. And a few people have walked past and picked it up and went, nothing ever happens here. Right, what's that? It kind of is a talking point as well. Did you think that at the time when you named it that?
It's a very tongue-in-cheek title. And if anyone looks at the reviews, quite a few of them go things like, nothing ever happens here, yeah, right, or not much, because obviously
there's quite a lot goes on.
Lots go on. And there's like 3 different romantic strands to follow if you're into
like a bit of romance in there, yes.
And there's like 2 separate crime threads to follow if you're into crime. Or is that 3? Well, there you go. You have to read it to find out.
Yes, there are two going on, yes, because all the different characters have their own little thread, don't they, going on with it as well. So that is out now. You also have a website if people want more details, don't you?
That's well, yes, I've got my blog. I write a blog, which is Foweraker.com. And if you're looking for it as an ebook, if you're not a Kindle user and you want it as an ebook, then there's anmade.co.uk, where you can have the books for EPUB versions. People who use Nooks and Sonys and things like that.
You know so much about these things.
I know.
I'm still going to stick with it, just with the paperbacks of it. Thank you. And if people want details about the Lou Literary Festival as well, it's www.louliteraryfestival.co.uk. Well, great to see you again this afternoon, and best of luck with the writing. And do keep in touch with us. Let us know how you're getting on.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me on again. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Good to see you again. That's Anne Foweraker talking about her latest book, Nothing Ever Happens Here. And also she'll be at the Lou Literary Festival next weekend.